Hi, I'm Reid Peterson, and welcome to Grief Refuge. Thanks for listening today and trusting Grief Refuge as a resource to help cope with your loss and help you navigate your grief. I'd like to personally welcome you, whether this is your first time listening or if you've heard my voice before. Grief Refuge is about providing daily support to help you find peace and purpose after experiencing a death-related loss. This podcast was created with the intention to help validate the hardship that you're experiencing, to take time to reflect, and to honor your loved one. Here at Grief Refuge, we focus on providing insights and support to help you learn healthy ways to manage grief. We're also here to comfort your aching heart, to soothe your grief-related anxiety, and to share wisdom and perspective for finding a way to embrace life and move forward again. Grieving is hard and it hurts. I'm glad you're here, and I promise to do everything I can to provide the best support to you. Before we begin, I want to mention a couple important things. Because of the nature and the depth of this topic, it may be more beneficial to not multitask while you're listening. Rather, I invite you to use this time for your personal self-care and reflection. So please use this time to settle in, to relax, and to allow your grief-related feelings to run their course. If anything, please use this time to mourn your loss. Also, this podcast publishes episodes once or twice a month. And when you're grieving, that's a lot of time in between each episode, and you likely need more resources to feel fully supported. If you're in a place of needing more support right now, I encourage you to download the Grief Refuge app. The Grief Refuge app shares messages of support every day. There's several features that help support you through this grief process, and they're all available at any time you need them. The Grief Refuge app is easy to find. It's a free download, and you can search it through your phone's app store. So please download Grief Refuge now to get started. Thank you, and let's move on to today's topic. Today, I would like to share some thoughts regarding some of the initial responses and reactions to a death-related loss. It's so tragic, losing someone you love so deeply or someone who had such an impact on your life. It's so painful. It hurts in ways that some people can't begin to describe. And even if you had a heads up that death was coming, you still may feel unprepared and overwhelmed with all of the emotions involved. There are several emotions that come as natural responses to loss. Today, my focus will be on 7 of them, and they are shock, numbness, denial, disbelief, repression, distraction, and avoidance. That's a list of 7 painful emotions that I'm sure you were never taught. They were never mentioned in school. They were rarely, if ever, discussed in your family growing up. Or they were probably never shared amongst your closest friends. But all of these emotions, with their realness and a good purpose to experience, are very important and significant to gaining a deeper understanding of how your grief process works. In our time together today, I'm going to share an overview about each of these 7 emotions. As I share, please consider which one, or a couple, might be affecting you the most. And please, do your best to not judge what comes up for you. These are natural responses and reactions to loss, with death-related loss being an event that most people never ask for. So, by you experiencing these emotions, they're neither wrong nor bad. They are natural, they're human, and also instinctive for surviving a tragic event like what you're currently experiencing. Let's start with the experience of shock. Shock often happens as a first response to loss, and it's sometimes credited as the beginning of grief. As most people know about physical or medical shock, in which the organs don't get enough blood flow, that will put your body in danger. Psychological shock, which is what happens when you grieve, is different in the sense that the surge of stress and emotions you feel can overwhelm the rest of you. As an example, if you felt like you were out of your body when you first became aware of the death of your loved one, that was likely the experience of what's called psychological shock. You can still be in psychological shock, even after weeks or months after your loss. If right now you're feeling disoriented, that's a strong indicator that psychological shock is still your current experience. And if psychological shock rings true for you, please do your best to make sure your physical needs are being met, like eating healthy, proper hygiene, sleeping, resting, relaxing. If you're unable to rest and relax right now, unfortunately, this is common, and it's okay to ask for help. There are great therapists and mental health professionals who can show you tools and teach you skills to help equip you with ways to cope and manage the more painful emotions, such as shock. Moving on from shock, let's now talk about numbness. Numbness is like this prominent detachment from everything around you. It can be like having an affluent effect in which you feel nothing. As a metaphor, numbness is like your body's gone cold, but you don't really feel it, so you don't tell yourself you need to do something to warm up. Numbness from grief happens a lot. It's a coping mechanism to help you survive the moment. It's not wrong, it's not bad, and it's not even a form of denial. One thing to know about grief-related numbness, though, is if it's not eventually addressed, you could feel some constant fatigue and then develop sleeping difficulties. Most of the people that I've supported through grief numbness have benefited from taking walks. Walking helps clear the mind, and it helps get the emotions to move within you. When you walk, you see different things, but you can also think about your loss and all the events currently happening in your life right now. So if grief numbness is a part of your experience, try to get out for a walk each day. Moving on to the next emotion on the list, I'm going to combine disbelief and denial within the same context. Grief-related disbelief often happens when you first hear about the tragic news. It's easy and natural to be unable to accept the reality of your loss. The unintentional denial can lead to feeling disbelief. This is a normal part of the grieving process, and it can actually help you adjust to the new, forced reality that results from your loss. So yes, you're hearing me correctly when I say that it's okay to have feelings of denial and disbelief. As counterintuitive as that may sound, it's helping you to survive right now, and it's helping you to manage your emotions within this moment. It's also helping to make your loss feel less painful and be a little bit more tolerable. Denial and disbelief may be what helps you continue to function and live, keeping some sort of routine. It also helps you continue to care for loved ones, continue to work, and feel some sense of normalcy in your daily activities. The next emotion on the list is repression. Psychologically speaking, that's taking your thoughts and your feelings about your loss and then stuffing or pushing them somewhere deep within yourself, all within the hopes that they don't resurface. There are theories that repressing thoughts and feelings is actually more harmful than helpful. By repressing grief-related thoughts and feelings, what happens is you likely prolong your whole process. A theory is that if it's repressed inside you, it still impacts how you think about other events in your life, how you relate to other people, and what your outlook on life may be. Some mental health models claim that if grief is repressed, it can increase the risk of having more depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress. Sometimes repressing grief just happens without any intention or any conscious thought about it. To prevent yourself from repressing grief, there needs to be some space to allow yourself to feel. Ideally, a safe and supportive space where you can truly express the grief that you're feeling and thinking about. Next on our list is distraction. This means bogging yourself down with tasks that fill your schedule or focusing on things that prevent you from processing grief. Simply stated, you make yourself too busy and your time and attention, it goes elsewhere. Distraction is common and it can be a helpful coping mechanism because grief can't be everything all the time, especially when you feel sad or you feel lonely or having no sense of direction. Distraction from grief requires some conscientious consideration about how long you want to avoid the feelings and the thoughts. For example, if you find yourself watching television in pretty much all of your free time, you may want to do a self-check to see if you're actually distracting yourself from something important. Distraction, like all other emotions described so far, it isn't bad and it's not wrong. Think of distraction as a temporary relief. But distraction can become avoidance, which is a full-out effort to keep the grief away. And that can become more harmful. Experiencing avoidance, it's like feeling a wave of sadness, but then telling yourself, nope, no time for this right now. And then never making time to process that feeling. Avoiding grief can have its harmful effects. It can create problems with forming new relationships. It can also prolong your grief process. And that means it could take much longer to feel better and move forward with a sense of love and honor for your late loved one. Avoiding grief can also make you feel more anxious or stressed, generally speaking. To prevent yourself from avoiding grief, implement the tools and the techniques already mentioned here. Acknowledging the reality of your loss and fully feeling what comes up is a meaningful way to process grief. Talking things through with someone equipped to listen and not judge, and doing things to nurture your physical and emotional needs. All of this helps. So as we wrap up this discussion about some of the initial and natural responses to grief and loss, in summary, there are 7 common emotions. These emotions include shock, numbness, denial, disbelief, repression, distraction, and avoidance. Many can be helpful in the short term, but most become harmful in the long term. You'll want to make sure that you're not resorting to one or more of these emotions to prevent yourself from fully processing grief. But you will want to make sure you're caring for your needs and not overwhelming yourself with too many thoughts and feelings about your loss. To help strike a healthy balance, you'll want to make sure you have a good support system with people who will listen and not judge. You'll also want to make sure you're getting proper nutrition and moving your body enough, and that you're engaging in activities that help you express your emotions. There's a lot to process from today's discussion, and I hope you take some time to think about all these emotions described here. Is there one initial response mentioned that feels more familiar? Is it helping you take breaks from grief? Or is it preventing you from processing your loss? Please take a moment to ponder your responses. And if you're feeling something quite strongly right now, I encourage you to use the journal feature on the Grief Refuge app to express your feelings. Try not to judge yourself when you do. Just express what you feel through the writing and the moving of the energy from what's inside to now what's something outside of you, invisible. That's definitely some good grief work for today. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I'm deeply grateful for your trust in Grief Refuge and the stories and insights and experiences shared here on this podcast. Grief and healing is important work, and although it's painful at times, it's worth it because it helps your heart heal, your mind heal, and even your soul heal. Remember that if you need more support right now, please download the Grief Refuge app. It's the best tool to help validate and support you on the grief journey. Plus, the wisdom and insights shared on the app provide a lot of perspective in helping you process your feelings. Please search for and download Grief Refuge on your phone's app store now. Also, please leave us a rating and review for this podcast. Your feedback is deeply valued, and it's listened to. We want the Grief Refuge podcast to best serve your needs, and the more you let us know, the better we can provide. So please rate and review the Grief Refuge podcast on your favorite podcast player. Thank you. Take care. Keep honoring your grief. Keep listening to your heart. Be kind to yourself, and talk to you soon.